Alexandra Eala, the teenager from the Philippines who didn't have to play today.
You're calling it.
She's winning the tournament.
Eala?
Yep.
Oh. Wow. Why do you say
Show you something that's trending on social media. How about this? You couldn't get close to court 6 yesterday. Alex Eala playing over there.
The internet went insane over Alex Eala. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The internet absolutely lost its mind. Within 48 hours, millions of views, thousands of furious comments, and an entire global fan base ready to go to war, all over a story that never actually happened. If you've been anywhere near social media in the past few weeks, you've seen the headlines screaming at you from every corner of the internet. Alex Eala, the 20-year-old Filipino tennis sensation, taking the WTA Tour by storm, allegedly walked off the set of The View after being ambushed by the hosts. Whoopi Goldberg supposedly went on a tirade. Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz were reportedly leading a full-scale industry boycott of ABC. Major luxury sponsors were said to be pulling millions in contracts and funneling the money into an Alex Eala integrity campaign. It was the most dramatic, most cinematic, most absolutely satisfying revenge story the sports world had ever seen. Fans were shaking. News feeds were on fire. The Philippines was ready to riot. There was only one catastrophic problem with this entire blockbuster production. Every single word of it was completely, entirely, 100% fabricated. Welcome back to Champions Tennis, the channel that serves you the real stories, the real drama, and the real truth from behind the baseline. Today, we are going deeper than we have ever gone before. We are ripping the curtain off one of the most sophisticated, most cynical, and most widespread fake news operations ever launched against a young athlete. We are exposing the shadowy network of engagement farmers who decided that Alex Eala's name, her image, and her extraordinary fan base were nothing more than a gold mine to be exploited for cheap clicks and dirty ad revenue. So, we always show you something that's trending on social media. How about this? You couldn't get close to court. And more importantly, we are going to celebrate the real Alex Eala, whose actual story is so unbelievably compelling, so genuinely historic that it makes the fake version look like a low-budget knockoff of the real masterpiece. So, buckle up, because this is going to be the most eye-opening, most jaw-dropping, and most satisfying video you watch today. Let's start at the very beginning of this rabbit hole, because you need to understand exactly how this machine operates to truly appreciate how insidious and calculated it really is. It started as these things almost always do with a single video, a channel with a professional look thumbnail, a dramatic title dripping with outrage, and a narrative so perfectly constructed that it pushed every single emotional button simultaneously. The headline promised something irresistible. A young, talented, unapologetic woman of color from Southeast Asia, standing up to the establishment, walking off a powerful American television show, and triggering a chain reaction that brought an entire network to its knees. It was Rocky. It was Cinderella. It was the ultimate underdog revenge fantasy wrapped in a tennis skirt and served with a side of righteous fury. The engagement was instantaneous and volcanic. The comment sections exploded. Share buttons were hammered repeatedly. The story jumped from YouTube to Twitter to Facebook to TikTok in a matter of hours. Filipino fan communities, tennis forums, and sports commentary pages all picked it up and ran with it at full speed. Jump into the biggest news of the week. Wildard Alexandra Eala. She beat her third consecutive Grand Slam champion at Miami just overnight. Huge news. By the time the algorithm had finished doing its ruthless, efficient work, the story had reached millions of people. Across dozens of countries, and an overwhelming majority of them believed every syllable. Yeah, but here's where it gets genuinely chilling, because this was not a one-off mistake. It was not a misquote, and it was not a case of innocent speculation that spiraled out of control. This was a carefully, deliberately, and cynically engineered piece of fiction. and the people behind it knew exactly what they were doing every step of the way. They understood the dynamics of Alex Eala's fan base with frightening precision. They understood that her supporters are among the most passionate, most loyal, and most vocal in all of professional sports. They understood that the Philippines as a nation rallies around its champions with a ferocity and a pride that is genuinely unlike anything else in the sporting world. They understood that if you can make that fan base angry, if you can convince them that their hero has been wronged, they will generate engagement on an industrial scale. And they weaponized all of that understanding against the very people they were pretending to champion. Let us now forensically dismantle each pillar of this fabricated narrative, because every single element deserves to be examined and destroyed in the light of day. The centerpiece of the entire hoax was the alleged appearance on The View. According to the stories circulating online, Alex Eala sat down for what was supposed to be a celebratory interview on the iconic daytime talk show, only to be blindsided by hostile, politically charged questioning from the host, with Whoopi Goldberg leading the charge. The story claimed that Alex, to the thunderous approval of the studio audience, stood up, removed her microphone, delivered a devastating parting shot, and walked off the set in what was described as a historic act of defiance. Now, here is the reality. There is absolutely no record anywhere of Alex Eala ever appearing on The View. Not in the show's official booking history, not in any entertainment press coverage, not in any verified social media posts from the show's production team, and not in any credible sports journalism outlet. The incident, the ambush, the walkout, the applause, the parting shot, the devastated host. None of it happened. Not even a version of it. It was invented whole cloth, written like a movement scene, and uploaded with a straight face to collect views from unsuspecting fans who had no reason to doubt that they were watching. The second pillar was the alleged boycott by Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. According to the fabricated story, these two tennis gods, and arguably the two most famous names in the men's game right now, were so outraged by Alex's treatment on The View that they went public with statements condemning ABC and called on the wider tennis community to stand in solidarity with her. I saw the other day with Alexa, that's been a talk, and which is understandable. The story described sponsors trembling, network executives panicking, and the entire tennis establishment rallying behind a 20-year-old woman as a symbol of integrity against a corrupt media machine. It was an incredible image. There is just one problem, which you have surely guessed by now. Novak Djokovic has made no such statement. Carlos Alcaraz has made no such statement. Neither of these men has said a single word about any Alex Eala incident on The View, because that incident does not exist. Their names were simply borrowed, their credibility was stolen without permission, and their reputations were used as props in someone else's fictional production. The people who manufactured this story did not care one bit about Djokovic, about Alcaraz, or about Alexa herself. They were names on a shelf, ready to be grabbed and used whenever the narrative needed more weight. The third pillar was the sponsorship earthquake. The fake story claimed that major brands, including specific references to luxury fashion and athletic apparel giants, were so moved by Alex Eala's supposed defiance that they announced a collective pivot away from ABC and traditional television advertising, channeling those funds into a new integrity campaign centered on Alex as its ambassador. Millions of dollars in imaginary contracts were bandied about with complete confidence. Executives were invented, press releases were implied, and the whole thing was presented as a seismic industry shift that would reshape sports media forever. And once again, there is no evidence of any of this anywhere in the real world, because it did not happen. No brands made those announcements. No campaign exists. The money is fictional. The drama is fictional. The entire earthquake was a special effect. Now, having established beyond any reasonable doubt that this story is completely false, we need to spend serious time on the most important question of this entire discussion. Why does this keep happening, and why does it keep working? Actually, the answer begins with the mechanics of the algorithm, but it does not end there. Social media platforms, YouTube chief among them, are designed with a fundamental bias toward emotional content. The stronger the emotion a piece of content triggers in a viewer, the more likely that viewer is to engage with it, to share it, to comment on it, and to watch more content like it. Anger, outrage, pride, and righteous indignation are among the most powerful emotions the algorithm can harvest. Content that triggers those emotions gets amplified relentlessly, regardless of whether the content is true. The platforms are not fact-checking machines. They are engagement-maximizing machines. And the people running these fake news channels understand this principle better than most corporate media executives. They have studied it. They have tested it. And they have built an entire industrial process around exploiting it. Alex Eala is in this context the perfect target. She is young, she is talented, she is beautiful, she is from a country with an enormous and deeply passionate sports culture. And she is in the early stages of a career that her fans desperately want to see reach the absolute pinnacle of the sport. That combination creates an almost bottomless reserve of emotional investment that can be tapped, monetized, and tapped again without ever depleting. There's also a darker dimension here that we cannot ignore. There is a specific kind of engagement farming that targets female athletes of color who are ascending rapidly in sports traditionally associated with wealth and whiteness. Tennis, with its country club history, its Wimbledon dress codes, its old money associations, and its complicated relationship with diversity and inclusion, is a sport where the rise of a young Filipino woman to the highest levels of competition carries enormous cultural significance. The people fabricating these stories understand that significance. They understand the history of bias and gatekeeping in the sport. They use that history as a backdrop for their invented dramas because it makes the fiction feel plausible. If you know even a fraction of the real history of tennis and the barriers that players of color have faced, a story about a powerful media establishment trying to put a young Filipino champion in her place does not sound impossible. It sounds familiar. And that familiarity is exactly what makes the manipulation so effective and so particularly reprehensible. But here is the part of the story where the narrative truly flips. Because the real Alex Eala, the one actually living and competing and winning in the physical world, is so extraordinary that the people trying to manufacture drama around her fictional self should be genuinely embarrassed by the comparison. Alexandria Eala was born on May 23, 2005 in Manila, Philippines. And she began playing tennis at an age when most children are still figuring out how to ride a bike. From her earliest years on the court, it was evident to everyone who watched her that she possessed a combination of natural gifts and competitive temperament that you simply cannot teach. She moved to Spain as a teenager to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, one of the most prestigious and demanding tennis mias in the entire world. This was not a vacation. This was not a photo opportunity. This was a young girl leaving her country, her family, and everything familiar to commit completely to a dream that most people would consider unreachable. She lived the grind every single day, training alongside some of the most talented young players on the planet, pushed by coaches who had helped shape world-class athletes, all in pursuit of a level of excellence that would one day justify the sacrifice. The results began arriving before she was even 16 years old. In 2020, Alex won the girls' doubles title at the US Open, becoming only the second Filipino athlete ever to win a Grand Slam title of any kind. The Philippines went absolutely wild. Social media in the country was overwhelmed with pride and celebration. She was instantly a national hero, and she had not yet played her first senior professional match. But she was not done, not even close. In 2022, she won the Roland Garros girls singles title, and that victory in Paris sent shockwaves through the junior tennis world. She was playing with a maturity, a tactical intelligence, and a physical authority that most juniors do not develop for years. The tennis establishment was taking serious notes. The coaches and analysts who watch junior tennis for a living were using words like generational. And Alex herself, she was already looking ahead. She was not celebrating for long. She was back in the gym, back on the practice court, working on the next thing, preparing for the transition to senior competition that she knew would be the real test of everything she had built. The WTA Tour is a different universe from junior tennis. The depth of quality in women's professional tennis right now is staggering. The physical demands are relentless. The travel is brutal. The mental pressure of competing week after week against seasoned professionals, many of whom have been playing at this level for a decade, is something that breaks talented players regularly. The transition from junior success to professional success is the great filter of tennis. And the list of players who were dominant juniors but could never crack the senior tour is long and sobering. Alex knew this. Her coaches knew this. And rather than rushing or forcing the issue, she approached the transition with the same discipline and intelligence that has characterized everything she has done on a tennis court. She picked her tournaments carefully. She built her ranking point by point, win by win, sometimes losing badly and coming back the next week to compete again. Her trajectory on the WTA Tour has been one of the most closely watched storylines in women's tennis over the past 2 years. She has climbed consistently, breaking through barriers in her rankings that represent genuine milestones. She has competed at the highest levels of the sport, tested herself against top 10 players, and demonstrated repeatedly that she belongs in the conversation about the next generation of Grand Slam contenders. Her serve, always one of her weapons, even as a junior, has developed into a genuine weapon at the professional level. Her movement on clay, the surface she grew up on at the Nadal Academy, is exceptional. And her competitive fire, that burning refusal to accept defeat without an absolute fight, has become something that opponents and commentators mention consistently. But here's what a lot of people outside the tennis bubble did not know about Alex Eala until this week. She is equally brilliant off the court. She is extraordinarily well-read. She is politically engaged. She is deeply empathetic toward marginalized communities. And she has spent years watching the women who came before her in tennis. Women like Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova, Serena Williams, Naomi Osaka. Women who understood that the platform of professional sport carries with it a profound responsibility of a grand, especially when it is uncomfortable. Eala grew up studying not just match footage, but social history. She knew who she was, she knew what she stood for, and when the moment arrived, she was completely, utterly ready. The fateful broadcast was a massive, globally syndicated live television special, designed to generate excitement and discussion around the upcoming summer sports season, and to explore the rich intersection of athletics, culture, national identity, and the historic American semi-quincentennial. It was exactly the kind of prestige programming that draws massive audiences and imposes enormous pressure on everyone involved, because tens of millions of people are watching in real time and there is no safety net. No edit suite, no second take. Pam Bondi was brought in as the cultural and political heavyweight, the establishment voice-lending authority and gravitas to the proceedings. Alex Eala was brought in as the face of international youth, the embodiment of the global sporting talent that converges on American soil for these world-class tournaments. The fresh face representing a new generation of athletic excellence. The pairing seemed complementary. The producers almost certainly anticipated an agreeable, well-managed conversation. They had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. The early minutes of the broadcast were exactly what you would expect. There were the predictable pleasantries, the mutual expressions of excitement about the upcoming tournaments, the obligatory tributes to the historic significance of the 250th anniversary celebrations. The host navigated the conversation with the kind of breezy confidence that comes from having conducted thousands of these interviews. A was gracious and articulate. Bondi was commanding and polished. Everything was going exactly according to script. And then the topic pivoted to the LGBTQ+ awareness campaign, and everything changed. When the host turned the microphone toward Eala and asked her to speak on the importance of inclusion and equality in modern professional sports, the room perhaps expected a carefully worded, PR-approved response about unity, diversity, and the universal love of the game. What they got was something dramatically different. Eala paused, looked directly and deliberately at Pam Bondi, sitting just feet away from her, and began to speak with a calm clarity that was almost unsettling in its composure. She spoke about the reality of LGBTQ+ athletes in professional sports. She spoke about the colleagues she knows, the friends she has made on tour, the struggles she has witnessed firsthand. She spoke about the genuine danger of performative allyship of campaigns that use the rainbow as a marketing tool, while the architects of those campaigns simultaneously support legislation that restricts, harms, or erases the rights of the very people they claim to be championing. With an unbroken, unwavering gaze that made hardened journalists in the audience involuntarily sit up straighter, Alexa called her a traitor. Traitor. Let that word resonate for a moment, because it was not chosen carelessly. It was chosen with surgical precision. In the year of America's 250th birthday, in a broadcast celebrating independence and freedom, and the foundational principles of the American Republic, to call someone a traitor is not just an insult. It is in that case. Yet she was saying that by claiming to stand for the values of freedom and equality, while actively working against the full citizenship and dignity of LGBTQ+ Americans, Bondi was betraying the very ideals that the 2026 celebrations were supposedly honoring. It was an intellectually precise and emotionally devastating charge, and it landed like a depth charge in that pristine, perfectly lit television studio. The silence that followed was one of the most extraordinary moments in recent broadcast history. People who were in that studio have described it as feeling like the air had been physically sucked out of the room. The host, a veteran of hundreds of politically charged interviews, looked genuinely alarmed. Camera operators, who are trained to remain invisible and expressionless, visibly stiffened. And Pam Bondi, yet one of the most experienced political combatants of her generation, looked for a fraction of a second like she had been hit by something she simply did not see coming. Her composure cracked just for an instant, and in that instant, the entire dynamic of the broadcast shifted permanently. But Bondi, to her credit, recovered. She is a professional political fighter, and professional political fighters do not stay down for long. She shifted immediately into attack mode, deploying the classic arsenal of tactics that have served her so effectively throughout her career. She began by attempting to patronize Eala, to diminish her, to reduce her to nothing more than a young foreign athlete who had wandered into waters far too deep and far too politically complex for her to navigate. Bondi questioned Eala's qualifications to speak on matters of American legislation and social policy. She insinuated that Eala was being naive at best and irresponsible at worst. A young woman playing a sport who had allowed herself to be coached into making inflammatory political statements she did not fully understand. She suggested that Eala should redirect her considerable energy back toward the tennis court where it belonged, and leave the complexities of governance to those with the experience and the knowledge to handle it. The message was clear and unmistakable. Know your place, little girl, and get back in your box. Eala, the teenager from the Philippines, who didn't have to play today, she's winning the tournament. Yep. Wow, why do you say that? Mic drop from a social media. How about this? You couldn't get close to court 6 yesterday. Alex Eala playing over there? This was a wild, wild scene.